The blade was already on the table when she entered the room. Roxana didn't know what it was for. Not yet. She was 14 years old, and this was supposed to be the happiest night of her life. Her wedding night. The room smelled like sandalwood and myrrh. Oil lamps flickered against the walls. And there, on a small wooden table beside the bed, sat a ceremonial dagger with a bone handle. Next to it, a white cloth folded into a perfect square. Next to that, a clay bowl filled with water stained red. She thought it was pomegranate juice. It wasn't. This is the wedding night ritual ancient Persia tried to erase from history. The one Zoroastrian texts mention only in fragments. The one Greek historians deliberately avoided describing even though they wrote about everything else. And by the time the sun rose over Roxana's wedding chamber, she would understand exactly why this tradition was buried, hidden, and eventually denied by the very culture that created it. If the darkest corners of ancient history fascinate you, subscribe to Reckoning History and hit that like button. When you reach the moment that unsettles you most, drop a comment and tell me where you're watching from. Let's begin. The ceremony had been beautiful. That's what everyone kept saying. Roxana stood beside her groom in the courtyard while the priest chanted in Old Persian, words she didn't understand. Smoke from the sacred fire made her eyes water. Her groom placed a copper ring on her finger. It was too big. It slid around when she moved her hand. He was 28. She'd seen him once before at the market, when her father pointed him out and said her future was decided. That was 3 months ago. Now she belonged to him. The guests ate roasted lamb and drank wine. Musicians played. Her father received the bride price, silver coins wrapped in cloth. Payment for the daughter he was giving away. Roxana wasn't asked if she agreed. Brides never were. When the moon rose, the women came for her. They led her away from the celebration, away from the music and laughter, down a narrow corridor to the back of the house. The bridal chamber. Her new prison, though no one called it that. They called it her marriage bed. They called it tradition. They called it holy. The oldest woman in her husband's family entered behind her. His grandmother. Her face was carved from stone, weathered by years of watching this same ritual play out with other frightened girls. She pointed to the bed. Roxana sat. And that's when the old woman began to explain. Tonight, you will be examined. Not by your husband, by me, by the priest, by witnesses your husband's family has chosen. This is how we ensure a bride is pure. The white cloth, he gestured to the table, will be placed beneath you. In the morning, it will be inspected. If there's blood, you've brought honor to both families. If there's no blood... She didn't finish the sentence. She didn't need to. Roxana's hands twisted in her lap. Her mouth went dry. She wanted to ask questions, but her voice wouldn't work. The old woman kept talking, her tone flat, like she was reciting a recipe she'd memorized decades ago. The examination will happen before your husband touches you. We'll confirm with our own eyes that you're untouched. Only then will the marriage be consummated. Only then will you truly belong to him. Roxana looked at the door. It was already closed. The priest entered. He was old, his beard gray, his hands steady and cold. He didn't look at her face. He looked at her the way a physician looks at a wound. Clinical, distant. He told her to lie down. She obeyed because she'd been taught to obey. The white cloth was spread beneath her. Her wedding dress, the one her mother spent weeks embroidering, was lifted. She closed her eyes. She tried to think of anything else. The flowers in her hair. The songs her sisters sang that morning. The way sunlight looked on the river near her childhood home. But there was no escaping this. The examination wasn't gentle. It wasn't quick. The priest used his fingers. The old woman watched. Another woman Roxana didn't recognize stood in the corner holding a lamp so they could see clearly. The pain was sharp, intrusive, wrong. Roxana bit her lip to keep from crying out. She dug her nails into her palms. She stared at the ceiling and counted the cracks in the plaster. When it was over, the priest nodded, satisfied. She was acceptable. They left without a word. Roxana lay there shaking, staring at the oil lamps, listening to her own heartbeat. Her wedding night hadn't even begun, and she already felt destroyed. Her husband entered minutes later. He'd been drinking. She could smell the wine on his breath. He didn't ask if she was ready. He didn't ask if she was hurt. This was his right. She was his wife now, his property. The histories don't describe what happened next, but the white cloth does. In the morning, the women returned. They took the cloth. They inspected it like merchants examining silk for flaws. There was blood, as expected, as required. They washed it in the red-stained water from the clay bowl, a ritual purification meant to honor the goddess Anahita. Then they did something that still makes historians uncomfortable. They hung the cloth in the courtyard for everyone to see. Proof, evidence, a public declaration that the bride was pure and the marriage was valid. Roxana watched from the doorway, her body aching, her face carefully blank. The wedding guests congratulated her husband. They congratulated her father. No one congratulated her. This wasn't her victory. This was theirs. But here's the part that makes this ritual truly horrifying. The part ancient Persia tried so hard to erase. What happened when there was no blood? Because here's the truth that every culture obsessed with virginity refuses to acknowledge. Not all women bleed during first intercourse. Doctors today know this. Anatomy varies. Some women are born with thicker hymens, some with thinner, some with almost none at all. Vigorous activity, horseback riding, heavy labor, even just childhood accidents can tear the hymen years before marriage. But ancient Persia didn't care about anatomy. It cared about proof. And if your body couldn't provide that proof, you paid the price. The punishment varied depending on region and social class, but the fear was universal. Some brides who failed the test were returned to their fathers in disgrace. The bride price was forfeited. The marriage was annulled. And the girl? She was ruined. No man would marry her after that. She'd spend the rest of her life hidden in back rooms, erased from family records, treated like a ghost in her own home. Others faced worse. In some regions, a bride who failed the white cloth test could be charged with zina, sexual impurity. The punishment was stoning. The evidence is scattered. Greek historians mention it briefly. Later Islamic texts reference it as a barbaric Zoroastrian practice they abolished. Fragments of Persian legal codes describe trials for brides accused of dishonoring their families. The punishment wasn't universal, but it was common enough that every bride knew the risk. The white cloth wasn't just a test of purity. It was a test of survival. And the cruelest part? Many of the girls who failed were completely innocent. Their only crime was biology. Some families tried to cheat the system. There are records, hidden in private letters discovered in Egyptian papyri, of mothers secretly pricking their daughters' fingers before the examination. A few drops of blood on the cloth, just enough to pass. If they were caught, the punishment was death. Not just for the bride, but for the mother who helped her. The system was designed to be inescapable. One letter, dated to the 5th century BC, was written by a Persian merchant to his brother. He's arranging his daughter's marriage, and he writes, "Have her examined by a trusted midwife first. Better to know now than face the shame later." He's talking about his own daughter, his own child. And he's more worried about shame than her trauma. The ritual wasn't unique to Persia. Variations existed across the ancient world: Rome, Greece, parts of the Middle East, medieval Europe. The obsession with female purity measured in blood spans, cultures, and centuries. But Persia's version was particularly invasive. The pre-consummation examination, the priest's involvement, the witnesses, the public display. It transformed an intimate moment into a supervised spectacle. And then, Persia tried to forget it ever happened. Zoroastrian texts that survived were edited, redacted, stripped of details that later generations found embarrassing. References to wedding night rituals were removed or rewritten in vague symbolic language. Fire, purity, union, all described in metaphors that obscured the physical reality. By the time Islam spread through Persia in the 7th century, the practice was already fading. Not because anyone realized it was wrong, but because it was replaced by different forms of control. The white cloth test continued in some communities, but the invasive examinations, the public displays, the involvement of priests, all of that started to disappear. By the medieval period, European travelers reported that the tradition had become a private family matter. By the 19th century, it had mostly vanished. Remembered only in folk tales and warnings whispered by old women. But here's what history can't erase: the archaeological evidence. In the ruins of Persepolis, clay tablets list wedding preparation inventories. White linen cloths appear repeatedly, always in the context of bridal chambers. In private letters preserved in desert sand, fathers discuss strategies to ensure their daughters pass the test. In fragments of Zoroastrian legal texts, punishments for failed brides are described in clinical detail. The ritual was real. The fear was real. The suffering was real. Roxana, the girl from the beginning of this story, is a composite. Her name comes from the historical Roxana who married Alexander the Great. But her experience represents thousands of unnamed girls. Girls who lay on embroidered beds while strangers examined their bodies. Girls who watched white cloths hung in courtyards as proof of their worth. Girls who survived or didn't survive the night that was supposed to be the beginning of their lives, but felt like an ending. How many were there? History will never tell us. The records were too carefully destroyed. But the silence itself is evidence. The gaps in the texts, the vague references. The Greek historians who wrote everything except this. They all point to the same truth. Some traditions are so cruel that even the people who practice them can't bear to remember. If you want to honor the memory of every girl who endured this ritual, leave a comment. Any name of a woman history tried to erase, from any era, any place. Let this be the memorial they never received. Subscribe to Reckoning History for more stories that refuse to let the past hide its darkest truths.